Tactiles convey vital information like hazards and directions to people who are visually impaired. They provide detectable contrast in the form of shapes, patterns, and colors that can be felt or seen to identify changes in the environment. Tactile use should be simple, logical, and consistent, and it should be integrated with the street design from the start, not as an afterthought. And yet, I often see the wrong tactiles being used or installed in a way that makes them less effective. So in this video, I want to go through the different types of tactiles and their uses in the UK to help create spaces available to all. This information is taken from the guidance on the use of tactile paving surfaces, which can be found in the Department for Transport's website. I will link it in the description below. One thing we need to know before starting is that sight loss can take many forms. Many people can still perceive contrast in tone and color, so variations from the colors indicated in the guidance on the use of tactile paving surfaces should be avoided. So let's go through all 6 types of tactiles that exist in the UK and how to properly use them. The first type, and probably the most complex, is the blister surface. These are the tactiles that are used at pedestrian crossing points, and they can be buff or red. The standard tactile slab measures 400 mm by 400 mm and should be installed at a slope of 1 in 12, maximum 1 in 20, to the bullnose curb, which should have a 6 mm upstand so it can be perceived. They are used in both uncontrolled crossings, those that don't have signals, and controlled crossings, those that have signals. First, I will explain their use in uncontrolled crossings. Uncontrolled crossings use buff-colored tactiles. The minimum width of the crossing should be 3 meters, but it can be taken further down to an absolute minimum of 1.2 meters, 3 slabs wide, in some special cases, like in historical town centers with narrow footways. The blister slab should be installed along the whole length of the bullnose curb, and for those crossing close to a junction, it should have a depth of 400 mm, 1 slab, unless the crossing is in the direction people are moving, in which case it should be 1.2 meters deep, 3 slabs. This is to make sure that someone with a bigger stride doesn't step over them, missing the tactiles. If the crossing is away from a junction, then the depth should be 800 mm, 2 slabs. Controlled crossings, on the other hand, should be red and installed in an L shape to guide towards the road. The width of a controlled crossing should never be less than 2.4 meters, but the actual width will depend on the type of crossing. The stem of the L should be 3 tactiles wide, 1.2 meters, and as long as necessary to reach the back of the footway, or 5 meters, depending on what's needed for the area. The depth behind the curb should be at least 800 mm or 2 slabs, going to 3 if the crossing is in the direction of the pedestrian movement. The L should be aligned with the crossing direction, so people can align themselves before crossing the road. This often means that the tactiles are not parallel to the curb, and more tactiles are added to keep the L shape while indicating the correct direction of the crossing. This applies to both controlled and uncontrolled crossings. In pedestrian refuges or staggered islands, regardless of whether it's controlled or not, 2 rows of depth, or 800 mm, are always necessary. However, if the refuge is less than 2 meters wide, the whole depth will be paved with blister tactiles. The second type of tactile is the Corduroy hazard warning surface. It conveys the message of proceed with caution, and it's used to indicate steps, level crossings, trams or other light transportation platforms, and transitions to cycle share spaces. They should be led perpendicular to the person's movement, at least 400 mm away from the hazard, and 800 mm deep, 2 slabs. Check the guidance for the use in level crossings, as it is quite specific. Third is the platform edge warning surface. Its only purpose is to indicate the edge of a platform for on-street trains and other light transit platforms. It is usually buff, but it can be any color except for red, as long as it contrasts with the area. This can cause problems because as the guideline doesn't specify the color that should be used, you can see them in colors which may not offer much contrast, and that should be avoided. They are known as lozenge, and they are installed as a single row with a setback of at least 500 millimeters from the edge along both ramps and the platform. Next is the ladder and tramline. The slab is similar to the corduroy, but the tops are flat rather than rounded, and it has fewer grooves. They are used to segregate footways from cycle tracks. On the footway side, they are installed perpendicular to the direction of travel, referred to as ladder, and on the cycle side, they are installed parallel to the direction of travel, tramline. The reason for this layout is that the rumble of the bike going over a ladder indicates to the cyclist that they are on the wrong side of the segregation. These tactiles should be led at the cycle route's beginning and end, using the path's whole width. They should be installed 6 laps deep, 2.4 meters. There should also be repeaters along the route, in this case 800 millimeters deep. Whenever the route is interrupted, for example in a shared use area around a pedestrian crossing, these tactiles should be at least 1.2 meters away from other tactiles to avoid confusion. Sometimes corduroys are installed instead of ladders and tramlines because they have a similar shape, but corduroys indicate danger, so their use to indicate cyclist segregation can lead to confusion. The use of corduroys in these situations is wrong. The fifth type is the guidance path surface. These are similar to the ladder and tramline ones, but the width of the groove is different and the design doesn't continue towards the next slab. They can be in any contrasting color except for red and should be used where traditional cues, such as the property line or curb edge, are absent. These can be in a pedestrian zone, for example. It's also used where guidance to avoid an obstacle is necessary or in transport terminals where the direction may not be obvious. They should be installed in the direction of travel and the path should be 800 millimeters wide. It should be as straight as possible, avoid hard bends, and be at least 800 millimeters away from obstacles on both sides. In busy areas like shopping centers, to avoid obstructions by other pedestrians or shopping displays, this clear zone should be increased to 2 meters. Check the guidance for specific information on what to do at right-angle turns, bends, and junctions, as specific layout patterns are required. Lastly, we have the platform edge off-street warning. These are used in any off-street rail platforms like heavy rail platforms and underground platforms. They are similar to blister surfaces, but the rows are offset rather than aligned. They should be installed immediately behind the platform edge stone, or at least 500 millimeters away from the edge, for a depth of 400 millimeters, one slab, for the whole length of the platform. They should stop where the platform ends or slopes down to the track, and it should never be installed across the platform. Those were the 6 types of tactiles in use in the UK. I hope you liked this video, and remember that tactiles can have very specific patterns and uses, and you should always check the guidance when in doubt. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.